Well, what do you think sticks in people's mind? The negative stuff they're hearing or the positive things they're seeing?
The diet in America has causes these chronic conditions. So much sugar.
Until you have their attention, it's just all blah, 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 blah.
Most people work really hard at their job and they get their health care insurance and they get a list of doctors they can go to. And they go see that doctor, and after a while you'll figure out you're going to get a 15 minute appointment, and you're probably going to walk out with a prescription of some kind. Not a cure, but something that'll help you. And
it's amazing how obvious it is to people from carotid ultrasound that there's a problem.
Which is not necessary. So much just processed ingredients and stabilizers. It's so not designed to keep you healthy. Now it's turning into, you got to find a doctor who will help you figure it out.
Hello, and welcome to Legends of Longevity with me, Joseph Entz. I'm your host, and I'm thrilled to have you join me on this journey towards living a longer, stronger, and more vibrant life. The podcast is about uncovering the secrets to longevity, things your doctor does not tell you, whether it's groundbreaking advancements in heart health, lifestyle tips to keep you thriving, or inspired stories of people who've defied the odds. Together, we'll explore the tools, techniques, and mindset shifts that can help you unlock your fullest potential. Whether you're here to learn how to enhance your well-being, support your loved ones, or just stay ahead of the curve in health and wellness, you're in the right place. Let's empower each other to not only live longer, but live stronger.
Hey everybody, this is Joe Entz, owner of Vasolabs Mobile Ultrasound. We make beautiful reports so patients can understand their heart disease, what's going on in their arteries. Today we're interviewing Dr. Craig Bax. He has a really interesting story that a lot of people should pay attention to. And as best I understand it, I'll give you a quick summary before we get into the wrap of it. But he was in the hospital working as a hospitalist for many decades, telling patients to lose weight, become fit. And he looked down and decided that he was a hypocrite because he was not a slim figure that he wanted to be, that he prophesied that he was telling people to be. And he CrossFit, turned his life around, got crazy fit, started going to the specialized education. He went to the heart attack and stroke prevention conferences and learned a lot of stuff that's not commonly known. Most docs learn from their pharma reps, and that information is a little bit compromised. It is a good narrative, but it's not the narrative. So Dr. Bax opened the Cure Center. He guarantees you will not have a heart attack or a stroke under his care, and he's got the metrics to prove it. He's got a website with an intake that's one of the most thorough I've seen, and he addresses everything that could be the problem with you. Not just blood pressure, just not lipids. He'll get in down to your oral bacterial health, if that's what it takes. He's got a lot of non-traditional answers, like what fruits can you eat that are candied that might actually be good for you. So in this conversation, we're going to talk about his book, his journey, the options that are out there, and what are the options for most people for heart attack and stroke prevention. So welcome, Dr. Craig Bax.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's people can't improve their life if they don't know about it. So I'm trying to find the best in medicine to put it out there so people can find it.
Well, so many people are in the situation that mushrooms find themselves in. They're kept in the dark and fed a lot of you-know-what to keep them well managed.
Yeah, so the patients that are finding you at your practice in Springfield, Illinois, tell me what your normal patient kind of is like and what you do with them.
Well, I mean, they come in all shapes and sizes. And actually, before I go too far into it, I'll just slight disclaimer. In 2012, I discovered Vasolabs, and then in 2013, I discovered the Baldoni method thanks to Joe's guidance. And I was looking for a solution to my own newly discovered arterial disease, which was happening at the same time that I was challenged to do the fitness journey that he described. Now, I did very, very well for a while, and I had some back and shoulder and neck issues, and I've had both hips replaced and some back surgery and neck surgery, and so my level of fitness is not what it was at one time, but So I'm familiar with the daily struggles that people have with maintaining a good diet, a good healthy diet. And so I have been through a lot of those challenges myself, and I have this condition. So it was really out of my own need that I was motivated to seek out better answers. And while my program doesn't guarantee, I don't have a money-back proposal, I just state my results, and that is not one of my patients has suffered a stroke or a heart attack in the last 10 years, and I think we're over a couple thousand now, which I think might be one of the largest such programs in the country. So, the patients that I'm trying to recruit are not all necessarily all that health conscious, but they, this is the most common cause of death and disability in our society. It's because it's the most common underlying medical condition, and it's typically unseen. People are not made aware of it until they have an event, and my goal has been to make it more obvious to people that they have this problem, and that's where Joe's company has been essential in raising awareness. So the key to our success is that we use objective measures like arterial age, which is a reflection of arterial inflammation on Joe's reports, and body composition analysis were very objective, and by measuring things we improve things, which is a real key to success. So I see people from their 30s to their 90s, men and women, of course. A lot more, maybe more women. It's interesting that women actually turns out they have this problem just about as much as men, and just are less aware of it. And from all walks of life, all educational levels, high school up to PhDs. The key to success is not necessarily how well educated a person is, it's how coachable we are. And the biggest challenge is, Mark Twain once said that it's not what we don't know that gets us into trouble, but it's what we know that just ain't so. And we've been taught a lot of things that just ain't so, and that we need to re-educate and reorient a lot of our folks.
My structure is going to be to talk about the doc's intake, maybe get some tidbits on things he recommends, then talk about his program, then talk about how you handle with patients and the results you see and that kind of stuff. That's the path I wanted to go down. Because your intake, doc, is like one of the best I've seen. You consider things that most people don't consider, like gut bacteria, mouth bacteria, how's your teeth brushing, because there's a lot of clues in these tangential sciences that tell you a lot about your vascular health. So how did you come up with your intake, and where are you getting your incoming education?
Trial and error is, I guess, the biggest way that this has come about. Prior to doing this program, I had 30 years of experience as a general internist, and most of the intake was based on methods I was taught 30 years prior to that. So but I came to the conclusion that arterial disease and diabetes, type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes and insulin resistance are the most common progressive chronic conditions that lead to premature death and disability, way more common even than cancer, and actually have some common root causes. And so the opportunity seemed to me to focus on the things that contribute to arterial disease and maybe exclude some of the less common things like autoimmune conditions and obscure things that people commonly get in wellness programs, applying what I call the 20-80 rule, or the Pareto principle. Many people are familiar with that we get 80% of our results from 20% of our resources or intake. So the goal was to be more succinct and focus on arterial disease and insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, even if it meant we missed some other less common things. And the other thing was key was, to be concise and above all digital, because when I first started down this path, it was very clear to me that if you tried to operate a practice or record-keeping system out of a paper folder with paper records and share information with other providers, that would be a disaster, dealing with faxes and snail mail and
Yes, it is.
and the like.
Wow. So you used to use fax machines, and your system's now totally digital. All the data can be easily sent one way or another to someone. And
Yeah.
I know doctors that refuse to do that. They still love paper.
Yeah, it's, the most common refrain I come up with for success is coachability. And a big part of coachability is being open-minded to learning new things and to get rid of old habits. I may be an odd duck in that way. Most people, it's commonly said, the only thing that likes change is a wet baby, but most of us are kind of stuck in the way we do things until they completely fail. And by luck or vision or whatever, even prior to COVID, I was working on this, and COVID, it just kind of hit at the right time that I had a digital solution that enabled me to move into the digital delivery, telemedicine focused space, using a tool that I was already well down the road to refining, having worked with a software engineer to, kind of use my practice as the mad scientist laboratory to figure things out.
Yeah, you got a great product. We've sent a few patients your way, and they seem very pleased.
That's good to know. Appreciate that.
Heck yeah. So, people right now are kind of waking up that our food supply is not optimal, that it's actually pretty hard to get good, nutritious food that your body can tolerate, that corn syrup and seed oils are poisoning America. That's probably the reason for the change in our body habitus since the 1970s. We're all getting a lot bigger, a lot easier. So patients got to come to you, and you've got to tell them something. What do you do?
Well, I tell them what my coach told me the day I walked into the CrossFit gym, and I was about 240 pounds. I got down to 165 at one point. I'm somewhere in the middle of that right now. But he said, it's not exercise, it's what you eat. And the key thing is don't eat any sugar. And there's sugar in everything. So the key thing is that our system, whether it was designed to do so or it's happened by accident, in the pursuit of profit, is that it's poisoning us. And I try to boil things down into ways that are simple and hopefully easy enough to remember, and maybe sometimes a little edgy. So I refer to the bad S's, and I start out with 4 bad S's, and that was the sweets, the starches, the snacks, and the sitting. Snacks meaning processed foods. Sitting obviously is less exercise than we should be getting. Starches, of course, is the carbohydrates for the white foods other than cauliflower, and sweets is sugar and artificial sweeteners, which are basically a gateway drug that maintain our craving for this addictive, mood-altering substance that we think we can't live without, but we can. It's I think the best way to approach it is to realize that this is an addiction that we're all more or less prone to, that we are best suited for an environment where we aren't eating all this kind of stuff, especially grazing on it. But our culture is driving us in the direction to continually use and abuse these foods. And so so going back with the bad S's, the sweet starches, snacks, and sitting, then I added seed oils to that, and then I rounded out with salt, stress, sleep disturbance, and smoking are the other S's. And if you want to, I'm sure others can come up with others that can add in.
Yeah, I don't want to play you at Scrabble. That's what I don't want to do.
Well, yeah, I've got I try to work on my vocabulary, but I think part of the problem that we run into, that I encountered in learning this, is that so many are somebody communicate to try to prove how much they know, as opposed to convey what they know to the patient in a way that will actually be beneficial. And so I was mentored earlier on in my career to KISS, keep it simple. And I guess I was taught keep it simple, stupid, but I guess you can't say that anymore. It hurts too many feelings. Yeah.
So you get great results with your patients, and you do a couple things different that most docs don't do. And let me set this up. So the American medical system is set up so if I find out I got a heart problem and a heart issue, and I'm told to go to a cardiologist, if I go to that office, there may be a dozen cardiologists there, and they'll patch me up. They'll stent me, they'll rewire me, whatever I need. But there's no like preventative effort. There's no ongoing, hey, here's how you stay safe in the future. Here's how you got to this place and how to avoid it. It just doesn't exist. So in your practice, patients come in and you do a few things to make that light bulb go off over their head, because you not only offer a prevention program, it's you try to say, I'm going to make you heart attack proof for the rest. So that requires education. And what are some of the tools? Obviously, I want you to talk about the carotid IMT, because that is so illustrative. It shows patients what's going on. But yeah, tell me about your intake and your process.
Well, most of us don't change to achieve better outcomes. We change because we get scared, or something bad happens to us and we're forced to change. I spent a lot of time in the last few years watching podcasts, listening and reading about persuasion and marketing. And, as professionals, we're often taught that, just show the data and it'll be convincing and that will lead to a result, and that's not true at all. Most people, we make decisions with our reptile part of our brain, fear, anxiety. And so first thing is to get the person's attention, to make them aware that they have a problem. And so, the butterfly ultrasound probe and your program, even before that, is great at getting people's attention. I've told people that there's two ways to get somebody's attention with this probe. One is you can hit them on the head with it, because it is pretty durable and it can get their attention that way, or you can use it to show them that they have a plaque, or the preceding findings that lead to plaque in their arteries, and then use language like a little bit of plaque is like a little bit of cancer. You wouldn't want to wait until it was a lot. And so it's about, using, and I don't like using fear and anxiety. That's not my natural tendency, or most of us want to be reassuring, comfort people, but it's not a moral proposition to let somebody sit under threat and not warn them. Going to what the alternative is, the referral to the cardiologist, I call it the slippery slope to a stress test, stent, and surgery. So getting back to our S's again. I'm starting to sound like, what was that, Yosemite Sam in supplementation. So, but the point is that, I hate to throw my colleagues under the bus. I've been a mainstream doctor my entire career. I'm 40 years into practicing medicine. I've been a leader in organized medicine, president of my state medical society, active in the AMA. But the profession has really changed a lot over the last 40 years. And, somebody, I forget where the saying comes from, but said everything starts out as a good thing, then it becomes a business, and then it becomes a racket. And I think the business model in healthcare has rewarded us for doing things, for doing procedures, and things that minimize the need for very exciting, late-stage procedures, like putting in a stent when somebody's in the midst of having a heart attack and saving their life. If you prevent that drama, nobody hardly notices. So the compensation has generally been more rewarding. So you generally follow the money. But I think people are starting to wake up that the healthcare system that they should be seeking is the one that treats them as the focus, as the customer, not as the product, which unfortunately the mainstream healthcare system is doing that currently. So
yeah, let's point that out for a second. Most people work really hard at their job, and they get their health care insurance, and they get a list of doctors they can go to. And they go see that doctor, and after a while, you'll figure out you're going to get a 15-minute appointment, and you're probably going to walk out with a prescription of some kind. Not a cure, but something that'll help you. And the diet in America has causes these chronic conditions. So much sugar, which is not necessary. So much just processed ingredients and stabilizers. And anyways, it's so not designed to keep you healthy that patients want to go see a doctor, and you're not going to get your fix that you're looking for. If you want to fix a problem, now it's turning into, you got to find a doctor who will help you figure it out. What are the underlying causes? What are the therapies that I'm not told about? And so patients are shopping for doctors who have solutions. They want an answer. They want to know, because I want to be fit. This is the only body I got for the rest of this lifetime. I got to take as good care of it as I can. So people are finding concierge doctors like yourself who will help make you heart attack proof if that's your objective. Because you're not going to find that in the medical system. Like we were talking about earlier, the cardiology group just does not have, most of them, the vast majority, do not have a prevention program. You're not going to get the answers you're looking for there.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. And the reality is that I think everybody who chooses to go to medical school is doing it for the right reasons. It's too arduous to get the grades to get into medical school and then get through medical school and accumulate the debt. But over time, the system rewards things that drive behavior toward, again, doing procedures as opposed to being holistic and preventive. And increasingly, I think as more and more doctors and nurse practitioners are employed by large hospital systems, and then by insurance plans, and then by venture capital, the general ethic of putting the patient first, do no harm, is giving way to more of a how do we benefit, how does the system, how do we return shareholder value, how do we get our profit for our system, and that those two things clash. And the payer system also is increasingly now leading to that, because the payer system likes rising healthcare costs. It's a whole nother system, a whole nother discussion, in the sense that the Affordable Care Act has made insurance plans behave more like casinos, credit card companies, and banks, living off the margin of the revenue that comes in and gets paid out because of the medical loss ratio minimal requirements. So that's a whole conversation that we don't have.
Are you saying that when you worked at the hospital, you had a manager that was demanding less time with each patient so you could bill out more?
Well, if I could have figured out a way to spend more time with each patient and bill out more, they would have let me do that. But the key thing is generate more revenue.
Just run faster on the treadmill, more patients.
Generate more revenue without increasing costs. And but and just to be clear, my professional life prior to this I was an outpatient primary care internal medicine, but I did spend 3 years as a hospital chief medical officer. So I wasn't seeing patients as a hospitalist. I was sort of overseeing, if you will, the processes of the hospital care and the people that were providing it, mostly from the physician side, and learned a lot about process improvement in the process. But one of the things I also learned is that when the professional who is causing the most disruption is also the person who is generating the most revenue, there's a tendency not to deal with the disruption or the poor outcomes. It's just the way it kind of works. So
Interesting.
What I found is, what I determined after I left that is that I was not going to put myself and therefore my patients under those incentives any more than I absolutely had to. So, the purest model is, if the patient is paying the physician, directly, then the patient is clearly the customer and the patient is the center. But most people have struggled to do that. they don't have the disposable income, and they're spending a lot of money on insurance. So I went with the approach that, can I offer the same results, maybe through a different process, while still enabling them to take advantage of their insurance coverage. When I say take advantage of, it's really getting what they paid for. Either they or their employer, one way or the other, the person's paying for it, without letting the insurance plans off the hook. So my initial intake now is the screening or the awareness of the condition might cost a nominal cost, maybe $100 or $200 at the most. And from there, we document medical necessity that we are able to bill many of those costs up downstream in further evaluation and treatment to the insurance plan. And it's
So you'll
worked
bill
out pretty well
insurance
for
for
the
the
most
blood
part.
tests, the smaller stuff, but you also have a cash clinic where you can spend the appropriate amount of time with each patient. And earlier you were alluding to the healthcare system playing shenanigans. So not only is the system not set up for the doctor to give you as much time and education as you need, like a healer wants to do. They want to spend time with you to help you get better. But the medical system, the single payer, they're going to exclude therapies or not pay for therapies that were excellent. It really is a racket where they'll take a pharmaceutical that could be very useful and mark it up 10,000% and have all these internal rebates so they keep more money. And, let's get back to natural, healthy stuff.
There are a lot of piggies at the trough, and they all demand to be fed. There are many layers of, and the solution is always, let's add another layer of piggies, to control the other piggies, and they become part of the problem. We see it in all kinds of bureaucracies, government,
So a patient comes to your
education.
office, they've done a thorough exam, you've got a lot of info on them, you're probably going to get more info, you're going to get some blood tests, but then you pull out your ultrasound and you show the patients what's going on in their arteries. What can you see? What can the patient see?
Well, if I may, before I answer that, I'm going to say I really don't do a thorough exam anymore. I scan first and ask questions later. Because it's just a lot easier to engage with the patient and to motivate them, and you get a lot more information if you just stick the ultrasound probe on their neck and show them, here's your problem. Or in some cases, well, I don't see a problem. And maybe all the medications you're taking for your cholesterol and your blood pressure are maybe, there's an opportunity to prune some of that and maybe focus on some other things. But by and large, for the most part, in my practice, in my office, with technology being what it is, with the butterfly probe, it plugs into my phone. I can aircast my phone to a TV monitor through my Wi-Fi, and I just sit the patient down in front of that TV monitor, and I just start scanning, and I say, see that? And it's amazing how obvious it is to people from carotid ultrasound that there's a problem. And it's because, especially in the cross-sectional view with carotid ultrasound, you really don't have to remember two shapes, a circle and an oval. It's really that simple. And if you see an interruption in that circle, you got a problem. And they see it right away, and it really gets their attention. And that's really the key. That's when the conversation can start. Until you have their attention, it's just all blah, 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 blah.
You don't get that same response with cholesterol tests?
No. Because everybody's so conversant with it. Not that many people have seen what their arteries look like.
How about standing on a scale? Does that help them?
Well, it is if we use a more advanced scale called a body composition analyzer. I happen to use an N-Body 570. There's a lot of other options out there, but I call ours the judge. And everybody gets to stand on the judge and learn what they're made of. And it just gives us so much more detail. Part of this, too, is people like technology. They are intrigued by it. They're intrigued by and we're very visual. A lot of things. But one of the reasons you ever notice those drug company ads on TV, they're talking about all the side effects, and that comes to us, in an audio form. In the meantime, you got these, people dancing around, having a great time and partying, and everything's, hunky-dory and sunsets and, rose petals. Well, what do you think sticks in people's mind? The negative stuff they're hearing or the positive things they're seeing? And so that's why video is so much more powerful than the audio or the reading. So it clearly, seeing is believing, and it's engaging. So, sorry to say, but, I think, again, using that reptilian amygdala part of our brain that really is the decider, whether they're going to do something or not. Now we can talk about, okay, how do we get rid of that fear and anxiety by creating a program that actually can stop that progression and put it into reverse so that they never have to see the inside of a cath lab or a cardiac rehab program or a neuro rehab or a nursing home or a memory care center or a dialysis unit for that matter.
Yeah. So that gets you the most momentum, is showing the patient what's going on. They won't argue with you. They just seem to accept those lumps and bumps in my artery are not standard.
Well, the thing is that they ask, well, how bad is it? And I'm actually working on a grid. I'll be happy to share that with you soon, get your thoughts on with you. But I go to the cancer analogy, because there's something about the C word that gets, people's attention. And I say, it's not cancer, but it's as serious as cancer, and it's progressive, and it is reversible and treatable as cancer. But you shouldn't wait until it's a lot of cancer. You wouldn't do that, right? You deal with it when there's as little, as possible. And so I think it's a very apt analogy. And so it's again going back to, you can convince people of a lot of things once you have their attention. And I think so much of well, first of all, the whole cholesterol story, that's a whole nother kind of a smokescreen, if you will. It's our focus that we've been staring at the wrong thing for many, many years. We've been staring at cholesterol levels when we should be focusing on, insulin resistance and chronic inflammation from oral health issues and the like.
Are you saying cholesterol was a bit of a moneymaker?
Well, everything has to be a moneymaker. I don't think there's anything wrong. We all want to make a living, right? We all have to have a sustainable. But it was an easily measured, bright, shiny object that people could point to and say, well, if this is coming down, then we're doing some good. Now, to some extent, there's. I'm sorry. Joe's heard so many of my cliches, but if you ever play golf and you hit a bad shot, but it turned out well, you heard the expression, well, even a blind hog finds an acorn once in a while, or a blind squirrel. And so, sort of by accident, they came across this class of drugs that we call statins, and they're actually naturally occurring substances that we refined. And one of the properties is it lowers LDL cholesterol. But it also reduces the risk of heart attack and stroke, but not by lowering cholesterol, but by reducing inflammation. Now, for probably 25 years, I've heard that called the pleiotropic effects of statins. Now that I've been through the Baldwin training and other training for cardiovascular disease, now I understand that it's more about the anti-inflammatory effect. But that's the key outcome from improving diet, exercise, managing stress, environmental pollutants, sugar. These are all pro-inflammatory conditions. It turns out there's so many. Really the root cause, fundamentally at the base of almost all chronic but progressive conditions, is chronic inflammation, and it's just a whole lot of inputs go into that, depending on how we live and where we live and what we eat and how we exercise and the other factors that go into our lifestyle.
So as a preventative cardiologist, you don't give cholesterol the heat that you did in the 1990s and 2000s?
Not even close. As a risk factor, it's there, but what I do now is, I talk about it because people expect me to, because, if I go completely off the reservation, people think you're insane or nuts.
But you order
But
cholesterol tests. You get the ApoA, ApoB, you LP little a. You do
sure.
that.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I look at it, but I don't stare at it the way I used to. I look
Now
at
you
other
look at
things.
the arteries and you're looking for, you call it cancer, but I call it a pregnancy test. Because,
Well,
like, on me, I've been going to these conferences for 20 years and it wasn't relevant. I didn't pay attention to it because I didn't have any plaque. But one day, I'm calibrating my machine and I saw some little nuggets in my artery and I thought, all right, all that knowledge is now real. I'm going to apply it to myself. What am I doing? And I made changes. I lost a
yeah,
bunch of weight. I cut the sugar out. Paid attention to seed oils. Watch out. Oh, that's the dangerous stuff. And it made a big difference in my life. And talking to doctors like yourself, people can feel better. They can get rid of that high sugar diet head malaise where you can't think. It's so disappointing finding out that the food pyramid was wrong. My whole childhood, grains and sugar are right there at the bottom, the base
yeah.
of what I should be eating. And when a nutritionist sat me down and said, hey, did you know that carbohydrates are just really long chains of sugars? I'm like, wait, this is a sugar diet. This is not cool. And then why is America insulin resistant? We got too much insulin and metabolic disease floating around, and all that causes inflammation.
Well, we're all insulin resistant to one extent or another. It's really a feature of our software. It's not a bug. The problem is that we're using the software in an environment that is not suited for our software. We're programmed to be hunter-gatherers, to find non-refined carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, protein and fat, feast on that, then travel and look for the next meal. Whether we have to dig it out of the ground or chase it down or find it. And that's feast and alternating fasting, and that's why intermittent fasting is so effective, is what we're programmed for. But we've been, our culture is driving us to be grazers. 3 meals a day, 3 snacks. The recommendations for somebody with type 2 diabetes who's taking insulin shots from 30 years ago has driven our food behavior for everybody else, and it's a disaster. But it's also an extremely profitable business model. And it's that the same people that worked for the tobacco companies 20 years ago moved over to the food companies.
All right. Have you seen? Okay, I love this story so much that in the 1980s, the tobacco companies were getting phased out. They had some cash, so they bought like RGR Nabisco. And there's some movies on this. I like old business movies. Barbarians is the Gate is a really good one if you want to understand. And the science applied to food. So remember how we used to joke about how Chinese food doesn't fill you up? There's not a lot of meat in Chinese food. There's a lot of carbs. And so you're hungry again. Now imagine some guy thinking, oh, dude, we can make an industry off this. We'll sell them Doritos, Fritos, just carb-based foods, and they'll always be hungry, and they'll always buy more. Dude, let's do this. They bought out the tobacco companies.
Chasing the dragon.
Yeah, man.
It's like heroin. It's really no different. Well, I mean, so that's why we imagine. Well, I always go back to the movie Animal House. There was a great line where the pledge had loaned his uncle's car, his town car or whatever, to these guys that took it on a road trip and completely trashed it. They brought it back, and he's just distraught. And the house president put his arm around him and says, "Face it, you screwed up. You trusted us." So the bottom line is that all these different entities that we trusted to give us good advice have become increasingly under the influence of, mostly mercantile, profit-driven.
Yeah. And then you ruin the car. And then let's go to Fast Times at Ridgemont High, where the dude says, "Hey, my brother's got some sweet tools," and they weren't the best tools. So be careful of doctors selling you the sweetest tools to fix your body up if they're short ones.
Yeah. So again, going back to the same people that ran tobacco companies and worked in the labs to make tobacco addictive, just moved over to food. And then the same large companies that own the food companies, guess what else they own? The pharma. So what if you had a business model where you had the ability to make it rain and you sell the umbrellas, you know?
Sweet.
And then, oh, by the way, you know, let's have the insurance. Let's buy the insurance plans that sort of finance it all. Now, I don't blame people for behaving in their own best interest. It's just that we need to recognize them and follow those incentives and say, no, thank you. I'm not going to play according to these rules. I'm going to choose something else. And my goal has been to make that, and sometimes use their own tools in the process. So I don't, you know, completely ignore health insurance. I use it when I can, but enable people to recognize how they can use the system in a way that's more helpful to themselves.
All right. So how do you break out of the system? And I'll tell you a little bit about my story. Is once I woke up and I realized these things are bad, I had to recalibrate my diet. 3 Cokes a day, 3 sugary sodas, and even if you get sugar free, that still spikes your blood sugar. Your body still tastes the sweet and pops out that insulin. So I had
for an alcoholic.
I had to reset my taste buds. It took me months.
Yeah.
I had to consciously decide, I like herbal tea with no sugar. I'm going to reset. That's now tasty to me. I decided it's tasty. What's not really, but I've got to get a low sugar diet, because if I eat the default food presented to me, I'm not going to get there. So there's this whole process of like reevaluating, what do I like, what is accessible, what can I snack on that's not horrible. And I like that you told me about bergamot and some of these really good vegetables and fruits that they've candied, and you can get them at specialty stores like the Chinese food store in your town. But it takes a conscious effort to realign your life to be in harmony with your healthiest body.
Yeah, mostly, but I think going back to, you call them the nuggets in your arteries. I mean, that was life altering. It's like, again, seeing is believing. That was like your wake up call. That was like seeing a little bit of cancer, or, you know, if you want to go to the pregnancy thing, you know, that, you know, it does get their attention. It also gets, when old fat, you know, bald guys like me talk about being a little bit pregnant, we're more likely to get into trouble saying those things. But nevertheless, the key is that until we make it personal and it feels like a threat to us, we're not, you know, it's like, it's the old expression, if you don't stop doing that, you're going to go blind, and the answer is, can I do it till I need glasses? Can I do it till I need glasses? So yeah. We all put these things off until it becomes more urgent. And a lot of, I think, the key to the success of, you know, to the extent, and believe me, it's taken me 10 years, and I'm still trying to figure it out, but I'm closer than I was 10 years ago, is, you know, the science, the medicine is probably 20% of it. The other 80% is getting the person to buy into it, even if it's something that's taking their medication consistently. Or, you know, and that takes, you know, it's data. You know, it brings us to the whole the whole science of process improvement, or boils down, I think the simplest model is, if you measure it, you will improve it. And that's why, you know, your reports that show arterial age, you know, I've kind of done away, to a large extent, unless people ask, you know, it's like plaque characteristics, and, you know, location is kind of irrelevant. And luminal obstruction is, you know, a thing that vascular surgeons focus on, because that's what they fix, but it's the last thing that we need to be paying attention to. But what's most reproducible, and that people can relate to, is who doesn't want to be younger in some way, either have younger skin or
Yep.
And so younger arteries is, in fact, I'm you know, to pick up on some of the buzzwords of the day, you know, make America healthy again, and actually I think as I think about it, I keep saying make your arteries healthy again, but I think the more motivating thing is make your arteries young again, because people then, they identify with that. That's what they want. They want youth, and so I think a lot of it is, we all need to be spending this kind of time talking about messaging and motivation. I don't know if you've ever
Here's
seen
one thing I
YouTube
really
videos.
like about your practice, and this is a growing trend in the medical industry. If you've got a good doc, he's going to take all the data that they got, and he'll give you a presentation. He'll show you visuals. He'll show you arterial health. He'll show you your blood. Like, the good doctors now put a TV screen up behind the patient so they can see it, and they'll go through it. Because the only way that I'm going to make changes in my life as a patient is if I understand that that is a bad habit, that's dangerous, and it's hurting me. My life could be better if I got rid of this habit or changed something. And you've got great graphics. You've got great stories and analogies to try to make it come alive. Because if you're not in the healthcare system where you're seeing a doctor or a patient every 10 minutes, if you're not seeing those kind of doctors, then you're seeing a doctor that's going to actually have the time to explain it to you in a way that makes sense. More of this, less of that. This is killing you, bro. And I've seen some of your slides where you show them to patients, and we want that light bulb to know what's killing us, what's coming at us, but we also want to know what's the path forward. What changes are reasonable for me to make that would make a huge, heavy half decision, a big influential decision or conflict of my life, outlook. Thank you.
Well, if you don't mind, I just throwing in a couple of other, if they're pearls or not, but they're things I've observed and that I go by, and I think it helps me, is to realize that most people are able to maybe consume and incorporate 1 to 3 pieces of information at any given sitting. And I think when I, first encountered, this through the training that I had, it's like, okay, here are your 14, opportunities for improvement, and here's how we're going to fix each one of them, and then everything's going to be fine. And I find that really, if you've ever paid much attention to how our behavior is influenced, including by the CIA or by the KGB, it's by a series of nudges. So what I've learned is that I don't expect people to go 180 degrees from eating the standard American diet to the Esselstein, plant-based diet, no mother, no food, or no mother, no face diet. If we can just get them to eat less sugar, and then maybe less the next time, and next time get rid of the sugary fruits, and then take their statin 2 days a week, and then 3 days a week, and then 5 days a week at that, but all along the way measuring for improvement, and show them how their behavior has led to a result, or their lack of a change has led to a failure, and it's highly motivating. Now, it's not for everybody. There's just some people just aren't ready to change, and that's how many doctors, sonographers, or whoever does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is only one. But first, the light bulb has to be willing to change. So if people aren't ready, aren't willing, aren't capable, then it's just they can move on to the next. But it's clearly there's a whole science to this. There's a science that's been used against the population to get them into this situation, because it's a very profitable model to be selling the poison and the antidote and all the maintenance processes in between, and then cover it up with the financing.
Now, you wrote a book to try to encapsulate the bulk of your knowledge, and you host it on your website for free. It's like you're trying to help people without taking all their money. That's crazy talk, Doc.
Well, I'm going to take some of their money, but not all of it.
I just want to help them.
Well, so here, I never really had a desire to, be a published author. That wasn't my thing. But what I did do is I created a website, thecurecenter.life, and in that I have a series of frequently asked questions. And the way I addressed this was, if I got a question more than once, in order to work smarter instead of harder, instead of repeating my spiel 10 times over, I created one narrative that covered that question and put it on the website. What does it mean to have plaque on my CMT? And over time, I accumulated enough of those that I put them all together, and I got about 100-page booklet. And I had hired somebody the same person who did my website, to compile that into a PDF, and then she identified a medium called a flip book that, we added it to that. And it wasn't terribly expensive, and so but it basically it's a guided tour through my website, frequently asked questions, and I added a forward. And then since then, a dentist friend of mine by the name of Tom Larkin, who we've been good friends for a long time, and been working together to educate people, he wrote the forward for me. So I'm distributing that ebook as a way. It's really, I've either spend money on marketing, or ads, or give out this information. And oh, by the way, for more help, here's where you can schedule a consultation. I am in the process of doing the Amazon Kindle direct publishing model, and so a Kindle and a paper version will be available for sale on Amazon within a few weeks. Because some people want paper, books to give as gifts, or and so I think there's no more options you can offer to a reasonable point. And it seems like the magic number in marketing is like 3 to 5 options. If you have 20 options, you can't choose. But if you have 3 to 5, then you can actually engage with something.
Yeah, let me set some expectations and tell you why this book's different. Because your story is you were a working guy in the hospital, and one day you woke up and decided that systems just broke, and left and went to the heart attack and stroke prevention conferences and got some pretty good education. And this is science as you see it. This is not pharma reps sponsoring it. This is you going to conferences and trying to reconcile all that information into a narrative that makes sense. So talking about vitamin D and how we're deficient, talking about the real things that you see affect us the most. It's like one of the few honest books that doesn't have an agenda. This is the science as I see it that's the most relevant, and it's not compromised by any special interests. So that's something people are looking for.
I think you give me a little bit too much credit. I probably wouldn't have made the change had I not been pushed in that direction by self-interest. Finding my own.
Yeah,
issues,
God pushes all of us.
But and there's obviously this is a combination. This is I think the most moral way to do business is to do well by doing good.
Yep.
And the exchange of some good in return for compensation, I think is. Nobody should have to apologize for that. But the part of the method to my madness I think we've all learned over the last 20 years that the more we use these devices, the faster life moves, that our overall attention spans as a population have diminished. And so getting somebody to read even a 250-page book is asking a lot. So if I can get them to read the first few chapters of Cure, in which, by the way, Cure, somebody said I could use that word more as a brand if I had an acronym for it. So that's why on the book it says Cure stands for the Catastrophic, Unseen, Reversible Epidemic of Cardiometabolic Disease. And I think each one of those words describes specifically, catastrophic. It is a damn catastrophe. It is unseen, which, your service helps us to see it. Key thing is reversible. That's, and one of the things I've incorporated into my language is not to emphasize, chronic, we're not going to get away from that. Everybody's too familiar with chronic disease, chronic disease epidemic. But that implies it's okay to be complacent. It'll be the same today as it'll be tomorrow. And so, a year from now, it's chronic, right? No, there should be some sense of urgency about it because it's progressive. Its natural tendency is it's going to get worse left to its own devices. But here's the good news, it's reversible, and you can put it into remission. And then the final E is epidemic, which I came up with this during the COVID, pandemic, epidemic thing, but I think in perspective, far more people are dying. Even during COVID, far more people died of heart attacks and strokes and suffered from related vascular complications than all the COVID direct cause deaths combined. And so, it's like, as a population, we have a tendency to pay attention to the latest bright shiny object and ignore what's going on elsewhere. And I think that's my cynical, suspicious nature tells me that, it's by design. I'm humored by, you probably have seen the interviews with Casey and Callie Means. I think their book that they wrote is Good Energy. He's a recovering pharmaceutical representative. She walked away from her career as an ear, nose, and throat surgeon and devotes her time now to educating people on good nutrition. But the whole, here are Fruit Loops in Canada, here are Fruit Loops in the United States, and these are unhealthy because they have red dye number 5, and these don't have red dye number 5, and the implication is that these are healthy. And like, well, they both have the poisonous sugar, So in my mind, I think the high fructose corn syrup industry and the sugar industry get together on a monthly conference call and say, okay, who are we going to pick to outrun so we don't get eaten by the bear? So this month it's going to be dyes, and the next month it's going to be microplastics, and the next month it'll be air pollution, but it'll completely divert all attention from sugar and
Sugar.
starch.
Protect the sugar at all costs. It's a drug.
Right.
There's nothing not a drug about it.
Just for the record, I'm not suicidal, so if anything happens.
Right, and putting together this narrative is so difficult. One time I was scanning a patient in Denver, and he worked for Monsanto. And do you remember back in the day that some farmer had his field in between 2 Monsanto fields, and the wind pollinated him, and Monsanto sued this poor farmer who had no control over it? Well, this guy said, I work for Monsanto, and we tried buying that dude out. We offered, because, we understand bad publicity, and we don't want any part of this, but now it's getting forced into Mexico, the GMO food, the glyphosate. And I've had way too many people come back from Europe and tell me that they didn't have any problems when they were eating the European grains. And here in the States, it comes right back, the GI problems and the inflammation. And people are starting to piece together that, we're kept on this food farm, and it's very difficult. Unless you've got the time and money and resources and the dedication, you're not going to get the clean foods. Is this what you're seeing?
Yeah, I agree. I think, but that unfortunately creates kind of a nihilistic approach. It's like, okay, if I live in a food desert, there's nothing I can do. Well, there's always some nudge that we can make to make things better. And again, I can show you plenty of people in my practice who are, clearly overweight, obese, and in fact, one patient I point to all the time, he's always in the 5th to 7th percentile. Is probably 75, 80 pounds overweight and never exercises. But he does take, the medications that we've prescribed for him, the supplements, and he comes in for regular follow-up. So, there's this, I think we need to recognize that if you've seen one solution for one person, you've seen one solution for one person. The more, there are common themes that we can go around that 20%, but then we have to get optimal results. It definitely helps to be able to personalize and meet people where they are. Because if we insist that everybody eat, nothing but organic food, locally sourced from a farmer that that's not going to work for somebody who lives in Manhattan or downtown Chicago. We need more than kind of create this impression that again, don't let perfect be the enemy of good or better. So we're not promoting perfection, we're promoting progress, we're supporting progress. What can you do? If you can't do this, what could you do?
Right. I like the levers analogy. There's some things you can change in your life, some levers you can pull and push. And one might be less sugar, more sugar. And you might realize that's the biggest input outcome I can have, is just adjusting the sugar, or walking, or getting a dog that I have to walk because I won't walk for myself, or what other drinks can I drink a lot of Coke. Just figuring out how to manage your life it takes a lot of time because we don't have a lot of wiggle room. So just knowing what you do have control over, and like you say, the one that have the most results, the heavy half, Yeah, the 80-20 rule. Work that as much as you can. Pay attention to your diet, your habits. What other great examples or results do you get from your practice? Like getting a dog to exercise. Like your patients that have really turned it around. What did they do?
Fundamentally, it's come in and be accountable for measurement. If I can get, if the best tool for getting them to lose weight is come back to see the judge every 2 to 3 weeks and see not only their weight change, but their muscle mass, maybe, and the other is, coming in every 8 to 12 months for their IMT measurement, their arterial age, and in between looking at the laboratory measures. So fundamentally, the real key to success is the coaching model. A coach tells you where you suck, where you have opportunities for improvement, gives you the tools, to improve that performance, and then holds you accountable. And that's why, I call my other business model and the platform Cure Coach, and that is that it's really not about a prescribing model, it's about a coaching and behavior modification. Well, I guess behavior modification is the best way, and that includes, how you eat, how you exercise, what else you expose yourself to, and whether you, follow, recommendations for supplement, and having measure. But the key thing is, if you measure it, it'll improve. If you don't measure it, it won't improve.
Fascinating. And how do patients find you? You got your website, and they can buy 6-month courses from you, year-long commitments where you'll button them up.
So the basic, most of it comes by word of mouth. But I go. So for instance, in the next couple of weeks, yesterday, I bought booths at 2 meetings. And they're about an hour from here in a town called Peoria, Illinois, about an hour from Springfield. And this came through a patient who's a part of a farm management organization. I said, well, how many people are in your organization? About 200. So they meet in Peoria in a couple of months. So a week from Thursday, I'm going to be there offering ultrasounds and showing people their plaque. And the 2 days after that, I'm going to be at the Midwest Truckers Truck and Trailer Show doing the same thing with truck drivers and truck owner operators. I've been, the whole, the key thing is having an ultrasound probe that you can show them immediately what's going on. I've said to a number of people, if your doctor shows up with a butterfly probe in their pocket, you should be happy to see them.
So you actually do something most people don't do, is they come in worried about heart disease. They probably don't take it seriously. They probably think they got high cholesterol. They know their blood, but I'm fine today. You're saying that if you can show their arteries in real time, these patients will actually make behavior changes?
Yep. Yeah. If you show them the threat, they will pay attention.
What's the most dramatic turnaround you've seen? For example, I don't tell my clients to scan, but every year, 6 months if you're being really aggressive, because the intima, the artery, does not remodel that fast. It doesn't change.
Yeah. Right.
So what have you seen?
I've changed over time. First of all, it used to be that I required everybody had to have the CIMT before I would even start. But let's say, for instance, if they've had a stroke, a heart attack, a TIA, stent, surgery, they don't need to be screened. They need to start getting help. They have the disease. So, and I'll try to get them scheduled for the ultrasound as soon as I possibly can. But you and I have been working on ways of removing or minimizing the effective bottlenecks in the process. And I think we increasingly want to evolve to where we have fewer and fewer bottlenecks, like having to schedule on a specific day and commit to that day to have the scan done. But what I do now for the most part, let's say, if I can get somebody, I scan them, I show them the results, we sit down, have what we call a discovery call. Here are the labs that I would recommend you do. Fill out the profile in the Cure Coach app, which is intended to be a quick and interactive and gamified type of history-taking instrument that allows the patient to do their work at a time when I'm doing something else. So the whole thing is asynchronous communication. People do it on their own time, hopefully make it kind of fun, enjoyable. And then we get together to review that laboratory information and develop their, what I call a cure plan. And then we put that in place, and then we measure 3 months down the road in terms of labs, and typically in 6 months on the ultrasound, 6 to 8 months. And to your point, a lot of this is taking time to how do you communicate these things. And I described your laboratory tests are what's happening at the moment that the needle was in your arm. So that's like how are your stocks or your portfolio doing today? But what's more important, how do they do over the last quarter, the last half year, annually? That's the ultrasound results. Or another way of saying it is the weather out today it's 2 degrees and it's sunny, it's cold as heck, but over the last 6 months it's been a little warmer than usual. So that's what the ultrasound tells us. It's kind of a lagging, or it is a lagging
Right.
indicator. But both are relevant.
How about continuous glucose monitor stickers? Do you find those useful for patients?
Oh, hugely, huge. And I don't encourage it enough. It's another example of if you want to know something that's valuable, that would really help your health, look at how the system stands in the way of you getting that information. So insurance won't pay for a glucose monitor until you're on insulin as a type 2 diabetic.
Cash, they're like 80 or $100, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So for a month's worth, and the key thing is it ties the behavior to the outcome just like that.
Yeah.
I ate this, I thought it was healthy, I had some low-fat yogurt full of sugar, healthy, and my blood sugar, jumped to here. I had some oatmeal, that's a healthy breakfast, right? Sugar jumps, and spikes in sugar means spikes in insulin. That's the pro-inflammatory state, that's the whole insulin resistance grinding. So anything that you can provide to somebody, it's like, you touch that hot stove and it burns you, it's like, you're not going to touch that hot stove again, right? So it's all about shortening the feedback loop between behavior and outcome.
Yeah, I did that with my daughter. We both got one, and we spent a couple weeks talking about it every day. Why did my blood sugar spike in the morning before breakfast? Oh, that's your body trying to find homeostasis. Your liver dumped it. And, that feedback loop, finding out what's good, what's bad, what's working for me, that was a really informative and powerful couple weeks.
Yeah, but it's, it's hard to sort out. I mean, everybody will make a different investment. So one person might make that $100 investment for the next month out of pocket to learn this. If let's say their mother, lost a bunch of toes or a foot to type 2 diabetes, they might be more motivated than somebody, who, had another personal experience. So it's a big part of the process is figuring out, what is the motivation, what the WIFM, what's in it for me, and that's going to be different for everybody, and that happens over time in a relationship. So that's why you go back to, you mentioned, what does the program look like? I still use basically a fee-for-service model. I charge for the the ultrasound, try to make enough to cover my costs, but I don't want that to be the big barrier to the getting in. Labs, if we can get them billed to their insurance, it's covered. Otherwise, it's about $300 from the when it's billed to me, and I turn around and bill it to them through Quest and Cleveland Heart Lab. And then I charge $400 for the initial consultation and about $240 for each quarter or half and follow-up. And so all in all, if somebody only needs a little bit of help, they don't have to pay as much as if somebody needs a lot of help. We tailor that. I think that people understand that model, better than some of the other models that are out there.
And you get a lot of really well-read patients. and they kind of want to use you as a consultant. The blood labs and all that's great, but at the level you're at, patients may have had an issue in the past, or they really want to sort in how to optimize their health and diet, what to eat, what not, like the tips and tricks that take a long time to figure out on your own. You can hire someone like Doc Bax, and he'll coach you. He'll tell you what fruits are working, how to diagnose what you're looking for, how to see your life from a different perspective, so you can make those changes, cut out the sugar, or walk more, or work on your blood pressure through natural means. Because nobody wants to use pharmaceuticals unless they absolutely have to. It's the last resort. If you can fix it with food and exercise and feeling better, that's probably the path to pick.
I'm going to disagree a little bit, and that
Please.
is, I think if you see the results, from whatever it is that helps you, you're going to want to keep doing that. And for some people, that's going to be their diet, their exercise. They're going to be totally committed to that. But if others, there is a role for certain pharmaceuticals, but they don't have to be the expensive ones. And the key. So you bring up, like, for instance, statins. I call it anti-statinism, or basically a war on statins right now. That they used to be the darling of the pharmaceutical industry, but now their genetics are like the, no offense, I hope I'm not offending anybody, they're the redheaded stepchild of pharmaceuticals now. And a lot of it, people say, well, I read this, that you shouldn't do that, these are terrible. Okay, what are they selling you as an alternative? Are they trying to drive you toward a PCSK9 inhibitor at 100 times the cost? Are they trying to drive you to a nutraceutical with less proven track record? But are they trying to, are they looking at higher doses prescribed for the wrong reason when low doses get you the same effects? So I think I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but what I don't believe in is saying, eat whatever you want, sit and watch TV all day long, don't get up and exercise, and take this, take $1,000 worth of pharmaceuticals. That's been the approach that has been perpetuating the problem for fun and profit, frankly, for the industry. So I naively, when I first started doing this, approached one of the interventional cardiology groups in town, saying, this, and they had a prevention specialist on their staff, but I since figured out that's just a window dressing. Every program has to give some lip service to prevention, but they were making their money in the cath lab. Okay.
Yep.
And ultimately, anybody that they did have a heart failure specialist at one time who was supposed to just tide people over till they get a heart transplant. Well, they got so good at treating heart failure that nobody needed a transplant. Guess what happened to him? He's now in New Zealand working. It's like, you don't get the model here, man. You're supposed to just be pretty and look like you're doing something.
That's too funny. Yeah, the system's set up a certain way, and to navigate it, it takes a coach.
And again, I'm not suicidal. Okay, so just something.
All right, well, that's a good podcast, Doc. Thanks for your time.
That's fine.
We got a lot of good stuff there.
All right.